I want to move on though to this order, the memorandum that the president signed that will declassify RFK, JFK, and MLK, right? John F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King. The thing that I thought was interesting off the top was the president said, in my first term, I was going to do this. And he specifically pointed out Mike Pompeo, who had been
Right.
CIA director, that they gave him pause. Is it right to read into that there's concern that it exposes potentially sources and methods of the CIA in one or all of those cases?
Well, I think possibly methods. I can't imagine that anybody is still around at this point. In terms of the sources, right? Like I frankly would like to see everything just throw it all on the table at this stage of the game, right? I just think it's ridiculous. And look, there's, this depending on estimates, there's 95, 96, 7% of the JFK files have already been released. Some with redactions, but I would say just shine a light on all of it. I suspect that we're not talking about concern over sources, maybe not even methods. I think what we're concerned about is perhaps with JFK exposing the fact that we really missed the boat on this one, right? Lee Harvey Oswald had come across the radar from a counterintelligence perspective of the CIA. And if the CIA at the time, right, and the FBI, and this is all armchair quarterbacking, but if they had been proactive and thorough in understanding, look, why is Lee Harvey Oswald, what's he doing down meeting with the Cubans in Mexico? Look, the guy lived over in St. Petersburg in Russia. What is this? What's happening here? If they had been more proactive, then perhaps we would have been talking about a completely different event. And that may be part of it. That may be one of the concerns, is like the embarrassment of it all. But I don't know. Again, that's pure speculation. But I would say let's just get it all out on the table.
So, I mean, I've been down at Dealey Plaza. I like to do a little armchair quarterbacking. I mean, what do you think, just in general, like with respect to JFK? Are we going to be disappointed? Meaning, so much is already out there. It's not like there's going to be a smoking bullet that said Lee Harvey Oswald didn't do it. There was actually a second shooter. Or should we be excited that, hey, we're going to get these last 10% or whatever it is and get some real insight?
Yeah, I think we should be happy that we get finally, full, however you want to refer to it, transparency. Some records have been destroyed. I don't think we're not talking full transparency here on any of these cases, but release those records. I think it will be unsatisfying. I don't think there will be, as you pointed out, a smoking gun here. Will the conspiracy theories in a variety of forms continue? Absolutely. Look, JFK is a particularly striking example of how people don't want to imagine that such a life-changing event took place because of the actions of one individual. There's got to be something bigger here, right? I get that. So I don't think it's going to put to bed some of these theories. Look, once they talked about JFK files being released, I started getting in my feeds all sorts of messages from people who know with absolute certainty how he was killed, right? Everybody's got a theory. And so I have a feeling we're going to get these files out. Hopefully they release them all. And I just don't think it's going to be particularly satisfying.
All right. But this is your world. This is your job. This is where your expertise is. So I do wonder, like the mob, was there some weird relationship there that they were tied to there's some obvious early Kennedy family, Joe Kennedy connections to the mob. The kids didn't seem as excited about the mob. I mean, I don't know how much of it is just conjecture. And it's like, hey, there actually was something there.
Yeah, I think there were definitely connections. There were definitely links. I don't think anybody in their right mind could say there was no contact between the Kennedy clan and the mob. Was there contact over a period of time between elements of the agency and the mob? Look, I was a toddler at the time, so I wasn't privy to that information. I was still in training at the CIA's Toddler School for Operations. But I think that there's certainly reason to believe that there were some connections. That doesn't mean that you can then draw a straight line to, the mob and the agency worked hand in hand to eliminate Kennedy. Look, I mean, there's all sorts of connections here. If you look at Martin Luther King, right, which I think that one definitely needs to be poked and prodded much further. But if you look at Martin Luther King, look, Bobby Kennedy, he authorized some of the wiretaps on MLK, right? So there's these bizarre little connections between some of these cases at the time.
So, at least, what is it, post Goldwater Nichols, it's classified information is more of a lot of need to know, right? So you have to get read in on certain programs, depending on your job, and then you get read out when you leave. The question I have for you is that do you know or believe that certain people have the full aperture of what happened, whether it's like the director of the CIA now or previously? Do former presidents of the United States, does somebody actually know what really all happened?
Yeah, I think there's a small number of individuals that I'm sure have gone through all the files, the paperwork. We know that from the last go around when they were going to try to decide how much to release or not release, as you pointed out during President Trump's first term. So I'm sure that's the case. Has there been someone who, took to their grave the knowledge of exactly what happened? Who knows? It's again, it becomes an interesting speculative exercise to imagine that there were a small number of people pulling the strings, and creating this. But then you start slipping down that slope of one world order and a secret cabal and all the rest of it. So pivoting from JFK to MLK, do I think that there were other factors at play with MLK? Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I want to get there in a second.
Yeah.
But I do think that, to your point, half of me is always there's no way Washington can keep a secret.
Right.
So enough people have to know. And then you do start to realize that there are stovepipes that, potentially there is a possibility that certain people got read in on certain things. And I even look at a guy like Jack Ruby who kills Oswald. And I'm going, okay, the timing on this just seems so perfect that this guy does that. Oswald kills Kennedy, Ruby kills Oswald, and it was like a pretty little bow. And you're thinking to yourself, okay, single shooter, the bullet angles, all this kind of stuff, everything lines up perfectly. And then, you just happen to have a dude who happens to just kill him, and it goes bye-bye. And it just seemed like an episode of Law and Order more than reality.
Right. And if you depending on who you talk to, that dude, meaning Ruby, was mobbed up. And so, yeah, I agree. I think, if you were going to be pulling on threads there in that case, and I spent a fair amount of time investigating the JFK case, and like you, was down at Dealey Plaza. I actually took a shot from the grassy knoll.
You did?
Yeah, I know.
Wait, how does that happen? Just out of curiosity. I mean, no one. Because if I went down there, I'd get arrested. So
I got to tell you something. If you want to create a bit of a stir, stand at the grassy knoll behind a fence with a rifle and shoot at a limo that's coming down the street while some of the tourists have no idea what's going on. Yeah. We did an episode for a show that I was hosting, and as part of the examination, we kind of looking at cover and concealment, and if there was a second shooter, and if they were up on the grassy knoll, as there had been some theory that, then how would that have worked from an operational perspective?
All right. So first question I have for you is, you got to tell me, was that permit central, where the Dallas PD were you got to get a permit, I mean, I can't imagine that they go, you just want to fire a shot from a rifle on the grassy knoll at a limo? Cool. All right, Mike, we'll just see you on Friday at 4:00.
Yeah. Well, it is Texas. So
that's right. All right. So after you run this op, what is your conclusion? Was it a single bullet? Could it have happened? What did you learn?
Yeah. I think you have to break it down into its individual components. First of all, you look and say, could Oswald have made the shot that we're talking about from the book depository? And the answer is yes. Look, he had sufficient training. Was he the world's greatest sniper? Well, no, but he certainly had sufficient training. He recce'd the site, meaning he knew where he was going to shoot from. He'd been there before. He understood what that was going to look like. It was a windless day, complete clear visibility. The vehicle was moving in a direct straight line from him. This was not a difficult shot from an operational perspective. Yeah.
Could you replicate it?
What's that? I'm sorry?
With your training, could you replicate that shot?
Oh, yeah. People with less training than I've got could replicate that shot. A weekend hunter could replicate that shot. Yeah. All
right. So you buy the theory, single shooter, grassy knoll.
Well, what I'm saying is it was possible. Look, I'm one of those people that says until you see all the evidence,
right,
you can't take anything off the table. So it's a little bit like I'm looking at the world of UAPs, aerial
Right.
phenomena, right? I think it would be incredibly pompous of me to say that there's no other life out there.
Okay.
With this, I'm just saying from an operational perspective, that shot was makeable for sure, but we haven't seen all the evidence. I haven't seen all the evidence, and so anybody who's got a conspiracy theory about it should also kind of take one step back and go, well, this is what I think happened, but I'm not going to blow smoke up people's, old address and say that I know for sure.
Okay. Before we get to MLK, I want to ask you about the RFK. What, if anything, do you think that we might learn about the circumstances of his assassination? There's obviously a lot there in terms of who was involved and the background of the individual. And obviously now that Bobby Kennedy is in the spotlight,
Right.
and was urging President Trump to do that, he obviously has a vested interest. He clearly thinks there's something more there. From your perspective and your background, is there something that we're going to learn from that?
Yeah, I think. Well, first of all, Bobby was very disliked, right, by a lot of people, criminal elements, the mob. There were a number of people who he was sideways with. So, was this a case of an individual who was seeking glory and decided to take action and or was there something more? Again, it falls in the same camp. I think that there probably were some connections. I suspect that we don't know or didn't know about, and maybe won't. It depends on how much of this they release. But now I'm willing to say that there's quite a possibility that there was other things going on here rather than a lone shooter, right? But look, if you think about the Trump assassination attempts, right?
Oh yeah,
you've already got a cottage industry of people who believe that first attempt, there was much more to it.
There was.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know. Well, there was a complete breakdown and failure on the Secret Service's part, unfortunately. But you've got what I'm saying is that's just the way it works, right? You're going to get that because what did the government not do in the Trump assassination attempt situation? They didn't. There was no transparency.
No.
Yet again, they never seemed to learn their lesson.
Yeah, well, I think for different, maybe. But the thing about RFK is, even Junior, Bobby Jr. now, has questions about the forensics. He says his father was killed from behind, shot 4 times by a security guard. I mean, he, who obviously is very close to this for obvious reasons, has serious questions about what I would see are the basic forensics about his father's assassination.
Yeah, and I'd certainly get that. Look, if you're a family member and something like that happens, and you're not getting the answers from your government, then sure, you're gonna have some real serious questions, as you should. But look, people think that the JFK's driver or JFK's bodyguard shot JFK. I mean, so there's. You can't swing a dead cat without hitting a theory about how either of those two, were actually killed. So I'd say the first real possible step here is to just do full disclosure of the files that exist, right? And then from an investigative standpoint, then you can step back and go, okay, what else is missing, right? We already know that a lot of the, some of the evidence from the RFK situation was destroyed, right, by the LAPD, just as a course of, theoretically, administrative actions. We're going to destroy this physical evidence at a certain point once there was conviction. But you have to build your case on something more than just belief or conspiracy ideas or whatever. So let's get the files out there, do more of a review, and then look and say from an investigative standpoint, what else? So I'm saying, if you want to do that, do it. But, you'd go from now until you die, talking about conspiracy theories.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.